Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 140 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where I have a mind for food and drink.
And singing and storytelling afterwards, I presume?
Always.
Well, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room, folks, and we'll be right there. I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who has not shown his usual cunning in getting up just in time for a meal, Alan Sisto.
Well, if you're cooking, Sean, that's probably a good thing, unless it's smoked meats.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's because I'm pretty good at the smoked meats, if I do say so myself. But yeah, so. otherwise, I'm probably just going to burn whatever I cook. And speaking of letting things sit in the pot for a long time, it's time to let time-traveling Alan introduce today's intro.
Well, today we're bringing you another new installment of The North Wing.
Barlam and Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn, made special for hobbits. Well, this is our place made special for some of our listeners to give us a chance to get to know them.
Now, rooms at the North Wing are a little bit hard to come by these days, so only our patrons at the Elrond's Honorarium and Círdan's contribution tiers are eligible. So if you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod.
Please do. We've got a waiting list for the North Wing right now, but we'll get to all of them soon, and we'll make room for more if necessary.
That is true. Well then, why don't we welcome our guest to the North Wing tonight, Rob Still.
Hey guys, let's have a bomba-delicious time for this.
Awesome.
Well said.
For those who don't remember, Rob was part of our studio audience, if you will, for Questions After Nightfall 7 back in episode 130. And he came up with that wonderful phrase that we absolutely love, and I wish we'd had before we talked about Tom for so much.
It would have been nice to use Bomba-delicious
over and over.
Really running it into the ground. 2-hour-long discussion about Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, I think we might have even used it as a title or at least a blurb. But so what? We're done now.
Can always be a T-shirt.
There you go. Bomba-delicious.
Oh, I like that idea.
I do too.
All right, filing that one away.
Definitely. Well, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? And what do your loved ones think of all this Tolkien stuff you're into? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Opelika, Alabama, right now, which is a small town near Auburn University.
Okay.
I'm a youth pastor, so
Okay.
I spend pretty much all my day hanging out with middle school and high school kids. And,
I'm so sorry.
Which it's a lot more fun than it sounds.
Yeah.
And it sounds pretty fun, so it's really great.
That's awesome.
Man, they all think that my Tolkien obsession is just super weird, because like most of them were born after Fellowship came out, as like Peter Jackson's Fellowship,
yeah.
right? Which makes me feel super old, and I'm still really young. So
you just keep saying that to yourself.
Yeah,
I'm really young. Just keep saying that.
Well, I'm only 23.
Okay, you
so
are.
Yeah,
then.
I'm actually really young. Yeah, but the kids think it's super weird. My dad was the one that got me into Tolkien, and
Good.
In my set of best friends, we have a World of Warcraft super nerd, we have a Skyrim and Elder Scrolls super nerd, and then I'm the Tolkien super nerd. So it kind of works out really well.
I was an adventurer like you until I took an arrow to the knee. Yeah, great stuff, man. All right.
That's awesome. I'm trying to think of a good follow-up because I feel like there's a great follow-up.
I know, there's something there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Well, how did your father get you into Tolkien?
So it's kind of funny. I had absolutely no interest in it really growing up. So I remember like I was a kid when the movies came out, and I remember them coming onto TV occasionally and just thinking like, oh, it's boring because they're not animated. I want to go, and I wanted to go do something else. And then probably around like sophomore year of high school, I read The Hobbit for school. No, it was earlier than that. I read The Hobbit for school, and then I was like, okay, I hate reading for school, but my dad really likes these, so let me try the Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, and read it for the first time and fell absolutely in love with it.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
Well, that's a really good segue into my next question, because we usually ask everybody who comes to the Prancing Pony, when and how you first discovered Tolkien's works, but you just answered that one. So what was it about that experience when you first fell in love with it? What was it about that made you fall in love with it? What keeps you coming back?
Oh, man. Just the depth of the world, I think. I know a lot of people just find like the Council of Elrond just like such a drag and really muddies their experience of the read. But for me, I read that and I was like, man, there are so many characters and so many different cultures and identities and so much like historical tension and all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, man, this is so cool. Like I can dig into each of these characters and each of these peoples and like figure out a way to identify with them. And I loved it. I think that's why I keep coming back, is because there's so much for me to continue to see and meet and identify with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of something Alan said before about just the depth of that world. There's just so much there, and the history and everything just adds to that. Yeah.
Well, clearly, or we wouldn't be able to make 3.5 years out of just as far as we've gotten,
and still ticking. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, we probably got what do we figure the whole run's going to be? 8 or 9 years minimum,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Rob, what's your favorite book in the Legendarium and why? And then what's your favorite non-Legendarium work by Tolkien, if you have one?
Yeah, I really like the Silmarillion.
Okay.
The Ainulindale is like probably my favorite piece of just written prose poetry ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one 100%.
That's a great one.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's amazing.
And then as far as a non-Legendarium work, I haven't read one, but I'm going to be reading through Beowulf pretty soon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not going to tackle the easy ones or anything. I was going to go straight to Beowulf.
I've been reading through Lamore D'Arthur with Corey Olsen, so I was like, I kind of need to throw in a little bit of some real Tolkien into this too. So
yeah,
there you go.
Very cool. You're going to love that one. It's such a great book, and it's such a great translation. I mean, I don't know enough about Old English to know what makes a good translation, but it reads really well. I love reading it.
That's it's a very readable, very enjoyable. Yeah. It's a page turner.
It is, and I understand.
You wouldn't expect Beowulf to be.
Yeah, and I understand it's a pretty faithful translation, but it still reads. It's such a gripping read.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it.
A lot of great stuff in the back. There's a lot of notes that Tolkien has made from some of his lectures and things like that. So a lot of additional commentary in there. Really great stuff.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good luck with it. Enjoy it. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, okay. I'm going to move on to my next question. Kind of a weird one, but it's a fun one. Have you ever given a pet or a child a name inspired by Tolkien?
Well, I don't have any children because I'm an unmarried 23-year-old.
Fair enough.
It's a good place not to have children if you're a 23-year-old single man.
Yeah. I don't think I could handle that responsibility.
No.
I tried to name my dog after, Ungoliant. I tried to name.
Oh man!
I tried to name her after. She's a black pit bull, and I tried to name her after Ungoliant.
Oh, that is comedy gold, right there.
That's amazing.
And I went for it for about 2 weeks, and then I started calling her name at the dog park. And I got, and she didn't respond to it, looks. And 2, I got the weirdest looks. So I was just like, all right, we're sticking with the name you had from the pound. We're going with Izzy. So
that's hilarious.
Oh, that's
I love
fantastic.
That. Ungoliant.
That
I tried
looking at you like
shortenings like Ungi,
Goalie,
Goalie, Ient.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. That is hilarious.
That's
I love
hilarious.
It. Well, don't give that name to a child if you decide to name a child after a Tolkien character, please.
I'm anticipating that my wife would never let me. My potential wife would never let that happen. So
no, not Ungoliant.
Not Ungoliant, certainly.
Yeah.
No.
That
is hilarious. That is really good stuff. Well, now we're going to go ahead and move into our lightning round. We'll each ask a couple of questions. You just need to answer a single, 2 or 3 words at the most. Try to keep this brief. Boromir or Faramir?
Faramir.
Yeah, that's kind of a given. Balrog wings, actual or metaphorical?
Oh, metaphorical.
Yes.
Good, you can stick around. All right.
I'm invited back, yay.
Yeah, I don't push the eject button right here. All right.
Get out. No.
This is a little more than lightning, but it still needs to be a quick answer. What happened to the Entwives?
I think they're with Tom in the Old Forest.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, one does not simply walk into Mordor, but if you could, Who would you rather have at your side, Legolas or Haldir?
Legolas.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Favorite author or book other than Tolkien?
Ooh. I have just recently started reading a lot of Brandon Sanderson. Really
Okay.
liking him.
All right. Well, man, those are some great answers. Thank you, Rob. We have really, truly enjoyed having you here in the North Wing. But I think it's time for all of us to head on back to the common room and join the rest of the listeners.
All right. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks again, Rob.
Our pleasure.
And we'll see you back at our next Questions After Nightfall, if not sooner.
Absolutely.
And now we return you to the podcast in progress.
And we're back.
We are, and we're finally ready to get back to the book, because we're all about the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
We bring you other Tolkien stuff from time to time, but at heart, Alan and I are fans of Tolkien's books and books about Tolkien. That's our passion.
And as you know, we read a lot of books in preparation for this show every week. So if you'd like to get your hands on a book we've mentioned, you're going to want to check out the official library page at our website, theprancingponypodcast.com. Now, there we have links to every book we've ever mentioned on the show.
And there's a lot of other stuff on our website, too. Show notes and book links specific to each episode, outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and a few other little extras. You'll also find a link to our online storefront where you can find shirts, mugs, stickers, and other great PPP gear as we get our designs up and running. And I can actually give you that address here. So that online storefront is teespring.com. That's teespring.com/stores/PPP. So please go check that out.
Absolutely. And now let's get Frodo off to the feast in mini meetings.
All right.
And we're going to go ahead and pick up exactly where we left off last time. And I'll start reading here with the last homely house. Frodo was now safe in the last homely house east of the sea. That house was, as Bilbo had long ago reported, a perfect house, whether you like food or sleep or storytelling or singing or just sitting and thinking best, or a pleasant mixture of them all. Merely to be there was a cure for weariness, fear, and sadness. As the evening drew on, Frodo woke up again, and he found that he no longer felt in need of rest or sleep, but had a mind for food and drink, and probably for singing and storytelling afterwards. He got out of bed and discovered that his arm was already nearly as useful again as it ever had been. He found laid ready clean garments of green cloth that fitted him excellently. Looking in a mirror, he was startled to see a much thinner reflection of himself than he remembered. It looked remarkably like the young nephew of Bilbo who used to go tramping with his uncle in the Shire, but the eyes looked out at him thoughtfully. "Yes, you have seen a thing or two since you last peeped out of a looking-glass," he said to his reflection. "But now for a merry meeting." He stretched out his arms and whistled a tune. At that moment there was a knock on the door, and Sam came in. He ran to Frodo and took his left hand, awkwardly and shyly. He stroked it gently, and then he blushed and turned hastily away. "Hello, Sam," said Frodo. "It's warm," said Sam, "meaning your hand, Mr. Frodo. It has felt so cold through the long nights. But glory and trumpets," he cried, turning round again with shining eyes and dancing on the floor. "It's fine to see you up and yourself again, sir." Oh, Sam, who does not love Sam?
I know. Sam he just brings life to every passage he appears in, doesn't he?
What a sweet guy.
Yep. But I guess we've got a few things to discuss here, and we should probably go back to the beginning, shouldn't we?
As we typically do, and we'll not say anything about this time.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
So I want to start actually at this bit about how Bilbo had long ago reported a perfect house, whether you like food or sleep or storytelling or seeing. Blah,
yeah,
blah.
I didn't catch this. You mentioned this when we were talking about the show ahead of time, and I did not catch that.
No, it's presented in quotes as if this is exactly what Bilbo said about it.
Right.
He didn't say that, not exactly.
Pretty close.
It's very close. The text of The Hobbit reads, "His house was perfect, whether you liked food or sleep or work or storytelling or singing or just sitting and thinking best, or a pleasant mixture of them all."
In other words, work seems to be missing.
Yeah, quite. And I just wonder, I don't know, is this discrepancy intentional? Is this supposed to be part of the frame narrative? Is this a sign of a textual tradition? You know, the idea that the author or scribe who wrote down this part of the Red Book of Westmarch is different from the one who wrote down the previous part, and they're just writing down a quote from memory?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Could be.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Maybe
but,
Frodo was just very entitled and never thought of work. I don't know.
He curiously forgot that part of it, didn't he?
Work schmirk, man.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting.
I agree. Also interesting, though, is this last homely house. Now, that phrase, we saw it quite a few times in The Hobbit. In fact, we saw it 6 times, but it only appears twice in Lord of the Rings. Here, and once again in Fellowship of the Ring, and the ring goes south. We never see it again after that. And it seems to me to be a shift in tone, like we've talked about before, away from the kind of simple and homely and towards the more epic style of Rivendell and Imladris.
Yeah. Calling Imladris a homely house seems almost too whimsical.
It does,
for
doesn't
Lord
it?
of the Rings, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's almost like having the tra-la-la-lally elves singing in the Lord of the Rings versus the Hobbit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also in the Hobbit, it's typically described, it being Rivendell, it's typically described as west relative to Wilderland. Last homely house west of the mountains. Last homely house in the west. Here it's the last homely house east of the sea. Now that's subtle, but I think it's significant because Rivendell isn't just a bastion of civilization against the wild. It's a remnant of the elder days, of the Valar, of the Noldor in Middle-earth.
So that calling it the last homely house east of the sea really is a connection to that blessed realm, isn't it? And the people who live there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
So, of course, Frodo, I love this recovery. He wants some food and drink and song and stories. I absolutely dig that little piece there.
I love that, not only because it brings song and stories parallel with food and drink, as if they're all basic needs.
Absolutely.
But also, if we can go back to On Fairy Stories and what Tolkien says about recovery, he says recovery, which includes return and renewal of health, is a regaining of a clear view. Yeah. I do not say seeing things as they are and involve myself with the philosophers, though I might venture to say seeing things as we are or were meant to see them, as things apart from ourselves. We need, in any case, to clean our windows, so that the things seen clearly may be freed from the drab blur of triteness or familiarity, from possessiveness.
I love that quote. And you definitely see some of that taking place in Frodo while he's here. This idea of kind of gaining that clear view, of regaining that clear view.
Yeah.
And of not being possessive. I mean, he's willing to put the ring on the pedestal in the film. I mean, he doesn't, I don't think he actually does that. I don't think there's a dais for the ring in the book, but this idea that he's willing to surrender it.
Yeah.
This is the ring. How hard is it to surrender? It's very, very hard. We know that. And yet he's willing to do that. In fact, he'd frankly prefer to, but yeah. So not only is Frodo recovering,
I mean, he even said, wasn't this in the previous episode? I don't think we talked about it, but isn't that where he says, I'm just kind of ready to go home? Man, I sure I'm glad I'm done with that.
Yeah. Story over.
He's ready to be done, but
yeah, he is. Yeah. So, but in terms of recovery, not only has Frodo recovered his health, or at least almost all of it, he's regained that clear view, right? I mean, his eyes looked out at him thoughtfully. In a way, he's also sort of recovered a bit of his youth.
Yeah. Yeah. There's almost a feeling of him having kind of waking up from a bad dream. It's like it's like a new morning. It's a fresh new morning.
Yeah, you're right. It is. So his arms mostly healed. Yeah. He's got this effective but rather unpleasant weight loss program we talked about.
It's a bit of a silver lining, I guess.
If that's what I have to go through to get back to the skinny young nephew who used to go tramping about, I don't know.
Then I'll just stay overweight, I think.
No, really? I was thinking as long as they can get that splinter before it gets to my heart, we're good.
I don't know.
No, I don't.
The enwrathening and the transparency. I'm not sure I want that transparency.
As long as you get me to Elrond in time. Just get me to Elrond in time. That's all I'm asking.
Wasn't that a song in the 70s?
Get me to Elrond in time?
Get me to Elrond on time? Yeah.
Something like that.
I don't know why.
But then Sam's arrival, the moment that we just loved at the end of that little reading, that he takes Frodo's hand. Of course, it was cold.
Oh yeah, it was cold, and now it's warm.
And he's all shy about it.
Glory and trumpets, he cried.
Oh, glory and trumpets, isn't it? I'm going to start using that phrase.
That's so cool because that's it's like one of those things. It's like it's almost biblical, but it's not.
Yeah, it certainly has that Lord bless you sort of thing.
Yeah,
that we
exactly.
Talked about before.
Yeah. It's completely secular, but it kind of gets the idea across, which is really cool.
Yeah, it does. Glory and trumpets. I swear I am going to start using that somehow. Something good happens. Glory and trumpets.
Yeah.
What a phrase. Absolutely love it. His love and dedication for Frodo just knows no bounds. He's genuinely moved and so thrilled to see him up and about. So
yeah, and we see that Gandalf actually sent him. Gandalf said, "Go get him." He didn't believe him. I thought he was joking. Right? Yeah, yeah.
But then, of course, Sam's like, "All right, fine, I'll take you to the party. Let's go." He, of course, thrilled to pieces to be around the elves. Talks about how the house
elves, sir. Elves here and elves there.
Love it. And boy, the description of these elves, isn't this great? Some like kings, some like children. And then the music. Oh,
it's like the full spectrum of elfness from like Glorfindel fighting the Balrog and coming back from the dead
to Tra-la-la-lally.
Tra-la-la-lally. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Absolutely awesome stuff. So then Sam does lead him to find their friends, and I'm going to go ahead and have you pick up right there.
Okay. He found his friends sitting in a porch on the side of the house looking east. Shadows had fallen in the valley below, but there was still a light on the faces of the mountains far above. The air was warm. The sound of running and falling water was loud, and the evening was filled with a faint scent of trees and flowers, as if summer still lingered in Elrond's gardens. "Hooray!" cried Pippin, springing up. "Here is our noble cousin. Make way for Frodo, Lord of the Ring." "Hush!" said Gandalf from the shadows at the back of the porch. "Evil things do not come into this valley, but all the same we should not name them. The Lord of the Ring is not Frodo, but the master of the Dark Tower of Mordor, whose power is again stretching out over the world. We are sitting in a fortress. Outside it is getting dark." "Gandalf has been saying many cheerful things like that," said Pippin. "He thinks I need keeping in order. But it seems impossible somehow to feel gloomy or depressed in this place. I feel I could sing, if I knew the right song for the occasion."
Sorry. There'll be no singing here. I can just hear Gandalf right now.
Pippin I'd rather just
I feel like I could sing. There'll be no singing. Sorry
I was saved at the last minute. "I feel like singing myself," laughed Frodo. "Though at the moment I feel more like eating and drinking."
I'm with him on that one.
Priorities, man.
That's right. That's right. Got to have a full stomach to sing well. Oh, man.
Yep.
What a description, first off. The physical description
beautiful. It's idyllic. Warm air.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Idyllic.
The light on the mountain. The sound of the water.
The scent of the trees. And this concept of summer still lingering in Elrond's garden. Let's remember, it's October the 24th, if you want to know. It's
right,
late.
Exactly. Yeah. This is fall. But we've got this very summery image. We're even told that it's like summer still lingered there. And so that seems to be evidence of Elrond's ability to somehow control the seasons, the weather, some sort of preservation that he has through the use of his Ring of Power, just like Galadriel's ring does the same.
Exactly.
Remember, and we'll get to this later this season, but remember that in Lothlorien, we're told that in winter, no heart could mourn for summer or for spring.
Yep.
Even the winter in Lothlorien was as beautiful as the summer and spring. And we get a little bit of that here, don't we?
Absolutely we do. I mean, it should be really pretty cold. This is a valley in the foothills of the mountains in mid-autumn. And it's summer still lingering in the gardens. The air is warm.
Yep.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely place. I want to be there when I hear that description.
Absolutely. Yep. I always say, when people ask that question, hey, what's the one place in Middle-earth you'd like to visit? And I always say Rivendell. I'm not always thinking of this part of it. I'm usually thinking of like the library and the lore and all that stuff.
Yeah.
When I read this, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally at Rivendell.
Oh yeah, I'm there. As much as I love the idea of the green rolling hills of the Shire, and I do, because I am a hobbit in all but size. Rivendell, there's no doubt.
Yep.
And then Pippin, as usual, puts his foot in his mouth and doesn't care. I mean, that's typical.
Pretty used to it. I mean, Gandalf, look, I get it, okay? You shouldn't say it. You shouldn't name the Lord of the Ring. It's a horrible thing to say for anybody who knows what they're saying. But do you think Pippin had any idea? Do you think Gandalf ever explained that to Pippin before?
To Pippin? No way. Not to Pippin, no.
Pippin doesn't know this.
No.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Cut him some slack. I'm just saying, cut him a little slack. Pippin is never going to learn if you don't instruct him.
No, that's true.
But Gandalf's method of instruction is like, let him screw up first, and then we'll correct
and then
him.
chastise him for it, right? Oh, goodness. And this is sort of, it makes me think of Mandos's line when Feanor's dad was killed, and Mandos is not the first. When he's talking about the first bloodshed, this is more like, not the last. This is not the last time Gandalf is going to give Pippin all sorts of grief. Not the last.
No, it is certainly not. Maybe that's why Pippin isn't too bothered by it, because he's like, whatever, he's so used to it.
Yeah, and you've touched on exactly what I was going to say, which is Pippin is bothered by it about as much as you imagine him to be bothered by it, which is to say none at all.
Not at all.
He's just, oh, goodness. What's that line from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Do you have any idea how much damage this bulldozer will suffer if I let it roll over you? None at all.
None at all, right.
And none at all is precisely what Arthur did. Something about the idea that his friend wasn't from Guildford, but was from
Guildford. He was from
Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
That book just pops right back in your head almost fully formed.
Man,
I don't know how that happens.
We've talked about this a few times recently. It's been way too long since I've read it.
I know. It really is.
But, I love Gandalf's observation that we are in a fortress.
Yeah.
Right? We are sitting in a fortress. It's reminds me of, we talked about this last time, Rivendell is a little circle of light. It's one of these places that it will be the last to fall, but it will fall if every other place falls. And they're just going to be these few little fortresses under siege.
Absolutely. What do we call it? Islands under siege.
That's right. That is where we are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll try not to do that anymore.
No, we won't.
No, we won't try. Not very hard.
Not at all.
So then Merry points out that, hey, because you've recovered, and apparently for no other reason, we have begun a feast. I love that.
That's nice.
It's not like, we were scheduled to have a feast today. It's like, as soon as we found out you were recovered, well, a feast was, planned. So
that's got to make him feel good.
Yeah, it does.
Not as good as he's going to feel as soon as he eats something. But
well, that's true. And it is that feast, by the way, that I'm going to go ahead and pick up and read. This is a little bit of a longer section, but there's a lot of key information here about these characters, and I want to make sure.
Yeah, this is really good.
The hall of Elrond's house was filled with folk, elves for the most part, though there were a few guests of other sorts. Elrond, as was his custom, sat in a great chair at the end of the long table upon the dais, and next to him on the one side sat Glorfindel, on the other side sat Gandalf. Frodo looked at them in wonder, for he had never before seen Elrond, of whom so many tales spoke, and as they sat upon his right hand and his left, Glorfindel, and even Gandalf, whom he thought he knew so well, were revealed as lords of dignity and power. Gandalf was shorter in stature than the other two, but his long white hair, his sweeping silver beard, and his broad shoulders made him look like some wise king of ancient legend. In his aged face, under great snowy brows, his dark eyes were set like coals that could leap suddenly into fire. Glorfindel was tall and straight. His hair was of shining gold, his face fair and young and fearless and full of joy. His eyes were bright and keen, and his voice like music. On his brow sat wisdom, and in his hand was strength. The face of Elrond was ageless, neither old nor young, though in it was written the memory of many things both glad and sorrowful. His hair was dark as the shadows of twilight, and upon it was set a circlet of silver. His eyes were gray as a clear evening, and in them was a light like the light of stars. Venerable he seemed, as a king crowned with many winters, and yet hale as a tried warrior in the fullness of his strength. He was the lord of Rivendell, and mighty among both elves and men. In the middle of the table, against the woven cloths upon the wall, there was a chair under a canopy, and there sat a lady fair to look upon, and so like was she in form of womanhood to Elrond, that Frodo guessed that she was one of his close kindred. Young she was, and yet not so. The braids of her dark hair were touched by no frost. Her white arms and clear face were flawless and smooth, and the light of stars was in her bright eyes, gray as a cloudless night. Yet queenly she looked, and thought and knowledge were in her glance, as of one who has known many things that the years bring. Above her brow, her head was covered with a cap of silver lace, netted with small gems, glittering white. But her soft gray raiment had no ornament, save a girdle of leaves wrought in silver. So it was that Frodo saw her whom few mortals had yet seen, Arwen, daughter of Elrond, in whom it was said that the likeness of Luthien had come on earth again, and she was called Undomiel, for she was the even star of her people. Long she had been in the land of her mother's kin, in Lorien, beyond the mountains, and was but lately returned to Rivendell to her father's house. But her brothers, Elladan and Elrohir, were out upon errantry, for they rode often far afield with the rangers of the north, forgetting never their mother's torment in the dens of the orcs. Such loveliness in living thing Frodo had never seen before, nor imagined in his mind, and he was both surprised and abashed to find that he had a seat at Elrond's table among all these folk so high and fair. Thanks for letting me read such a long one.
That's a great one.
It really is
a great one.
It's an important passage. It introduces it introduces Arwen. This is huge.
Yeah, it introduces Arwen. First of all, going back to the beginning, you see Elrond's hall. This is like, I mean, he's in the great chair. He's at the end of this long table on the dais. This is like, a mead hall. Elven style,
absolutely it is. Mm-hmm.
You've got Glorfindel and Gandalf at either side. That's a really cool image, just because
isn't it?
You know how powerful these two are.
Oh yeah.
And yet they are sitting in, what do you call it? They're sort of like
they're seats of honor, but they're
seats
of
honor. They're not the head. That's
right,
what I'm getting
exactly,
at.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just the image that these two strike on either side of Elrond. I mean, these two Glorfindel and Gandalf are almost opposites in appearance if you really break down these descriptions.
Yeah, when you look at those descriptions, absolutely. Glorfindel's tall and straight, and Gandalf is short. Shorter in stature than the other two. I don't think he's 5'4" or anything like that.
Right, he's shorter. Yeah.
Right. You've got golden hair for Glorfindel, and you've got white hair for Gandalf. You got the fair young face. You've got the aged face with the snowy brows. It's just bright, keen eyes versus dark eyes like coals. I mean, it really there's a distinct difference between them.
But what I like about it is that they both have wisdom in their description. They're both wise.
Oh yeah.
Glorfindel has wisdom on his brow.
Right.
Gandalf is described as looking like a wise king.
Yeah. Boy, do I love that line about Glorfindel. On his brow sat wisdom, and in his hand was strength. Is that not just...
That is really
that's
cool.
A cool line.
Right.
that is so cool.
That is true. And, that almost is kind of another subtle contrast, isn't it? He's got...
Yeah, it is.
He's got, in his hand was strength, whereas Gandalf is sort of... he looks like a wise king out of ancient legend. Somebody who maybe isn't as strong.
Right.
But is seen a lot, and I almost get a sense of, where it says Glorfindel is described as full of joy and fearless. I almost get, with this wise king description, I almost get a sense of a little bit of sadness, the sadness that comes with age and wisdom in Gandalf.
Sure.
I'm not saying Gandalf
knowing
is sad,
all that he knows.
That's a better way of putting it, because I don't mean that he's sad, but he's burdened. He's got cares.
Yes.
And I love...
You should be singing the blues here in the Hall of Fire. Gandalf's going to bring out his guitar.
Oh, man.
Sing us some blues about the old
I'm just imagining, that...
I've seen a lot of things.
There's those pictures of Gandalf wearing the sunglasses that go around. You could just totally see that. So I love this description of the two. I love the subtle contrast between these two.
Yeah.
You really do get sort of a complimentary picture of these two. And Elrond...
Elrond seems to be above the combination of things, huh?
A little bit, yeah, I think so. I mean, he's described as ageless, but has the memory of many things.
Yeah.
He's got dark hair, so neither golden nor white.
Right.
He's got gray eyes, not dark, not bright.
Or bright. And then he's venerable and hale. So it's like he's got the oldness of Gandalf, that wise king sort of thing. But he's got
also the strength,
the youthful strength. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess speaking of Elrond, it's probably time for us to do a little sidebar on him, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I think
probably as good a time as any.
I'm looking forward to this.
I know. It's been a long time coming, huh?
Yep, indeed.
We're going to start with a helpful overview from Hammond and Scull about the history of Elrond here. Elrond, of course, was invented by Tolkien very early on, in 1926, in the sketch of the mythology. Now, that's the synopsis of the first stage mythology that Tolkien wrote in order to provide the backstory for the alliterative Lay of the Children of Húrin to his former master at King Edward's school, R.W. Reynolds, and which became the new starting point for the Silmarillion. That synopsis is, of course, published in the History of Middle-earth, Volume 4, the shaping of Middle-earth.
That's right. And in that synopsis, so again, as early as 1926, Elrond was already the son of Eärendil and Elwing, as we know him to be in the Silmarillion. So he was already half-elven on both sides. Now, some of the details and the role of his brother Elros, some of that stuff came in later. But the main identity of Elrond that we know was in place that early on.
Yes, it was.
However, something interesting happened. When Tolkien wrote The Hobbit, he didn't necessarily see that Elrond as this Elrond. He actually wrote in letter number 257 to Christopher Bretherton, he explained that the passage in chapter 3, and of course he's referring to chapter 3 of The Hobbit there, relating him to the half-elven of the mythology, was a fortunate accident, due to the difficulty of constantly inventing good names for new characters. I gave him the name Elrond casually, but as this came from the mythology, Elros and Elrond, the two sons of Eärendil, I made him half-elven.
There you go. And it's because Tolkien just gave the Hobbit Elrond that name on a whim that you get this description you get in chapter 3 there, where it says, the master of the house was an elf friend. Not an elf, you'll note. One of those people whose fathers came into the strange stories before the beginning of history, which frankly sounds like the Edain.
Yeah, and then he's compared to an elf lord.
That's right.
But he's never said to be an elf lord. He just has both elves and heroes of the North for ancestors. So where exactly he falls within the context of The Hobbit is completely ambiguous.
Yep.
And we did actually talk about that back in episode 57 when we talked about chapter 3 of The Hobbit.
That's right.
It's kind of ambiguous in that story whether Elrond is more of an elf or more of a man.
Right.
And partly this was because, and I'm going to quote Hammond and Scull here, when Tolkien wrote The Hobbit, Elrond played only a minor role in the Silmarillion. It seems Tolkien hadn't really fleshed him out as a character yet.
Right.
They say it was only about the time that The Hobbit was accepted for publication that Tolkien began to write about the Second Age, in which Elrond played an important part in the resistance to Sauron.
Yeah, but that was millennia ago. And by the Third Age, Elrond had settled into the role we know him in, which Tolkien puts wonderfully in this footnote to letter 131 to Milton Waldman.
Yay!
There's the one. Elrond symbolizes throughout the ancient wisdom, and his house represents lore, the preservation and reverent memory of all tradition concerning the good, wise, and beautiful. It is not a scene of action, but of reflection. Thus, it is a place visited on the way to all deeds or adventures. It may prove to be on the direct road, as in The Hobbit, but it may be necessary to go from there in a totally unexpected course. So necessarily in The Lord of the Rings, having escaped to Elrond from the imminent pursuit of present evil, the hero departs in a wholly new direction, to go and face it at its source.
Wow, that's really cool.
Isn't it?
I love the idea that Elrond's house represents lore. I mean, that's just what we were talking about. You know, why it's so attractive to some of us, the fact that all this knowledge is there. And I love this idea of it being a place for reflection, not action. You know, it's just sort of it's a waypoint on the way to something else. That's super cool.
That's why we can have a council of Elrond and not a battle scene of Elrond.
Right. Yeah. Not the, I don't know, the army of Elrond or something like that. We don't get that in this story.
Nope.
Now, if you're interested in more about Elrond, actually a few weeks ago, Tor.com published a really interesting article about Elrond by Megan N. Fontenot. It's called Exploring the People of Middle-earth, Elrond Half-Elven, and it gives a really great overview of the textual history of Elrond and how that character developed over time in Tolkien's notes. And we'll put a link to that in our show notes.
Absolutely. And then we get to Arwen. Young but not, dark hair, clear face. She's got the same gray eyes as her dad. And like Frodo noticed, she's so like in form of womanhood to Elrond.
Yeah.
That he realized immediately he's looking at somebody who's a relative.
Yeah, you can totally tell, oh, she must be his daughter or close relative. Yep.
Right. And there's so many parallels to Luthien. Now, let's remember, though, Luthien is her great-great-grandmother. She's not that,
right.
she's
not that far removed. Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we learned in Appendix B that she was born in Third Age 241. So she is 2,777 years old here. She doesn't look a day over 2,000.
She looks great for her age. It's ancient elvish secret, I guess.
Ancient elvish secret. Is it oil of Olway?
It is oil of Olway. Although it shouldn't be
man.
because she's descended from Elwë, not Olwë, I guess. But,
That's true. So in her case, yeah.
I think we last made that joke in reference to Luthien, so I think it's quite fitting that it came back
I think
here.
it is fitting. You're right. You're right.
But now we probably should mention her mother, or talk a little bit about what happened to her mother, right?
I think we should. Yeah.
So her mother is Celebrian, the
Yep.
daughter of Celeborn and Galadriel, whom
That's
we
right.
haven't met yet, but I think everybody listening knows them.
Right.
And this comes from Appendix A. It says, in 2509, so more than 500 years prior to where we are right now in Lord of the Rings, Celebrian, wife of Elrond, was journeying to Lorien when she was waylaid in the Redhorn Pass, and her escort being scattered by the sudden assault of the orcs, she was seized and carried off. She was pursued and rescued by Elladan and Elrohir, but not before she had suffered torment and had received a poisoned wound. She was brought back to Imladris, and though healed in body by Elrond, lost all delight in Middle-earth, and the next year went to the Havens and passed over sea.
So we just introduced her, and we hate to reference her death so soon, but folks, you know what's coming. I mean, really, it's not a surprise. Actually, we just wanted to acknowledge that one of our listeners, Kim G., wrote to us about a year ago asking why Arwen couldn't sail into the West after everything happens. We ended up talking about this in our last Questions After Nightfall, episode 138, among other things regarding the fates of Arwen and her brothers. But we didn't have Bartleman's bag open at the time, so we didn't see that Kim had asked a similar question. Sorry, Kim. We hope you caught episode 138.
Well, and also in follow-up to that conversation we had in episode 138, which was in response to Arthur's question.
Uh-huh.
I found this afterwards as well. Tolkien said in letter number 153 that the end of Elrond's sons, Elladan and Elrohir, is not told. They delay their choice and remain for a while.
Yep.
Now, that could be why, to Arthur's point, people just assume that they did eventually sail, but it does leave it kind of open-ended intentionally. Mm-hmm. Kind of.
Yeah. And I think it also demonstrates that delaying their choice was an option. They weren't forced to make the decision at the same time as Elrond himself. Mm-hmm. So, true. Yeah, I think the truth is we just don't know.
And therein lies the interesting part of that discussion.
And so many discussions in Tolkien. We
Totally.
Just don't know.
Yeah,
the text is unclear.
You really have to be comfortable with that as an answer as a Tolkien fan, don't you?
Yeah. You have to be okay with that ambiguity.
It's hard for us too. I mean, we
sit
here and talk about this stuff and we struggle with that.
Yeah.
But sometimes
people ask us for answers like we should know.
Yeah.
Clearly they haven't been listening to the show long enough if they're asking us for answers.
Yep. We do our best though.
So I love the way this section closes out, that with Frodo's reaction to being seated at Elrond's table, surprised and abashed to find that he had this seat.
Yeah.
It's just, you can just see this humility, this sort of.
Yeah. This feeling of, man, I don't belong with these people. Like,
no, I mean, he's embarrassed. I mean, that's really what abashed is.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, this is big for him to be there. I don't belong here. Yeah.
Yeah. Frodo's humility. I think you're right. But Sam is there.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam, even Sam was a guest of honor. He actually wanted to wait on Frodo.
I know.
But he's told, no, you're a guest of honor. Pippin and Merry are also guests. But
they're all three of them are sitting at one of the side tables.
Yeah.
So they're not on the dais like Frodo is, but they are very close to it.
But they're, But Strider's not there.
No. You wonder why. You wonder why. Bum, bum, bum. All right. You are going to pick up there as we meet an old friend.
Okay. Next to Frodo on his right sat a dwarf of important appearance, richly dressed. His beard, very long and forked, was white, nearly as white as the snow-white cloth of his garments.
Wow.
He wore a silver belt, and round his neck hung a chain of silver and diamonds.
They come running just as fast as they can, 'cause every girl's crazy about a sharp-dressed dwarf. Problem is they still have beards.
That works. That works surprisingly well.
It does. It does a little bit, especially with the beard. I mean, he's like the guys from ZZ Top, you know?
Yeah.
Beard down to the floor, the silver chain, the diamonds, you know?
Absolutely. It's perfect.
What's that? Absolutely. Cufflinks and stick pin. When I step out, I'm going to do you in, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
And his wallet's fat too. This is Glóin. He's not one for money.
I got to say, I like the consistency. You know, we saw.
Oh, yeah.
Back in The Hobbit Chapter 1, Glóin had a white hood.
Yeah,
And
that's
he
right.
had a
He did.
silver
I
belt.
forgot
Well,
all about that.
And he had a silver belt, or at least he was part of a group that were all described as having gold and silver
that's
belts.
True.
But I'm sure if he was wearing white, he had to have a silver belt because white and gold would just look gaudy.
Yeah, a little bit like maybe B.A. Baracus from the A-Team. I don't know. Did he ever wear white? I know he had a lot of gold.
He definitely had a lot of gold.
I don't know if he ever wore white.
I don't know. Now I'm just imagining Glóin little. I pity the fool.
That's great stuff.
But the necklace is new.
Yeah,
the necklace
I think
is
you're
definitely
right.
new.
Got a little
And
new
also
bling there.
A bit of B.A. Baracus there. But anyway.
No doubt. Let me let you get back to the reading the passage. I didn't even let you get through a paragraph.
I suppose we should.
Man.
All right.
Sorry.
Where did I stop?
Not sorry. Right after the silver and diamonds on the chain.
Silver diamonds. Okay. Frodo stopped eating to look at him. "Welcome and well met," said the dwarf, turning towards him. Then he actually rose from his seat and bowed. "Glóin at your service," he said, and bowed still lower. "Frodo Baggins at your service and your family's," said Frodo correctly, rising in surprise and scattering his cushions. "Am I right in guessing that you are the Glóin, one of the 12 companions of the great Thorin Oakenshield?" "Quite right," answered the dwarf, gathering up the cushions and courteously assisting Frodo back into his seat. "And I do not ask, for I have already been told that you are the kinsman and adopted heir of our friend Bilbo the Renowned. Allow me to congratulate you on your recovery." "Thank you very much," said Frodo. "You have had some very strange adventures, I hear," said Glóin. "I wonder greatly what brings 4 hobbits on so long a journey. Nothing like it has happened since Bilbo came with us. But perhaps I should not inquire too closely, since Elrond and Gandalf do not seem disposed to talk of this." "I think we will not speak of it, at least not yet," said Frodo politely. He guessed that even in Elrond's house, the matter of the ring was not one for casual talk, and in any case he wished to forget his troubles for a time. "But I am equally curious," he added, "to learn what brings so important a dwarf so far from the Lonely Mountain." Glóin looked at him. "If you have not heard, I think we will not speak yet of that either."
Tactful answer. Very tactful.
Yeah, very.
So the Glóin. Or the Glóin, as the case may be.
Yes.
What was that line that finally convinced me? It was that because it didn't rhyme with groin.
Because the names that the Tolkien kids came up with to make fun of the names.
To make fun of them.
It was like blow in and go in and grow in and stuff.
Whereas full well, if it was Glóin, they would have had a groin in there.
It would have been like loin and groin and coin.
Yeah, no doubt.
Purloin.
Sirloin. Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Enough
so
of
yes.
That. Stop rhyming, and I mean it.
Anybody want a peanut?
All right. Oh, man.
So, yeah, this is the Glóin. And right away, wondering why 4 hobbits would be on such a journey. Hey, this isn't normal,
No.
Nothing like this has been seen since my day.
Right.
When we got Bilbo out of there.
And he's just one of them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But even he knows better than to press matters. He's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be asking you this,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it's funny because Frodo changes tack immediately, like, oh yeah, probably not. Oh, by the way, what are you doing out here? So
kind of changing the subject, isn't he? He's like he doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to be impolite. So he's like, so hey, what about you? Tell me about yourself.
What brings you here? What's a dwarf like you doing in a place like this?
And Glóin gives it right back to him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He's like, well, I guess we won't talk about that either.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he does have plenty of things to talk about, though, doesn't he?
Definitely. Yeah.
In fact, he goes on. He's pretty long-winded. He's that guy at the table that you're kind of like, why do they sit me next to him? He won't shut up. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, dwarves, they do that.
Dwarves, they got a lot to talk about.
Well, we get some good catch up on what's been going on in the region of the Lonely Mountains since the Hobbit. We find out that Beorn's son, Grim Beorn, is now the lord of many sturdy men. He's called Grim Beorn the Old, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, considering he wasn't born, as far as we know, at the time of the Hobbit.
Yeah,
and now he's old. I mean, it's been 77 years, we know, but this is just a reminder of how much time has really passed.
That's a very good point.
But we learned that the Beornings are keeping the High Pass open. and the Ford of Carrick. They do charge some high tolls, though, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They do.
Just like Beorn, they don't care for dwarves.
No. But, they can still trust them. That's the important thing. They are trusty. That is much in these days, as he says. Boy, isn't it?
Yeah. And people might be wondering, are they still skin changers like Beorn was?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, going back to The Hobbit, it actually does suggest that the men of Beorn's line might be skin changers. And I'm quoting here, "It is said that for many generations, the men of his line had the power of taking bear's shape, and some were grim men and bad, but most were in heart like Beorn, if less in size and strength."
It is said.
So, yeah.
So we don't know for sure, but yeah, it's
suggested.
Yeah. We like to believe the it is said. But that's, of course, only Beorn's line. It's not all the Beornings, but it's, Beorning and his direct descendants.
And the men of his line, specifically.
Right, the men. That's right.
I think that means the males because it is not capitalized.
It is not capitalized. That's right. It's specifically referring to the males of his line. Yeah. No doubt about it. And well, then we get a bit about the Bardings, right? I mean, we learn that Bard's grandson, that would be Bran, son of Bane, son of Bard, he's ruling them now, and that the kingdom is expanded to the south and east.
2 generations down from Bard.
Yeah.
As opposed to 1 generation down from Beorn. I don't know if that's significant. Just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it is.
I mean, maybe it's the age of Beorn.
Longer.
I mean, maybe it's the age he was when he had a child.
Yeah.
Bard might have been, significantly younger when his son was born.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Could have been. I don't think it means anything. Just kind of an interesting detail.
I agree. And of course, the kingdom has expanded south and east, so they've been growing. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick up when we learn more about the dwarves. This is, mostly good news, as they say, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up there.
Okay.
"There's much to tell, good and bad," said Glóin. "Yet it is mostly good. We have so far been fortunate, though we do not escape the shadow of these times. If you really wish to hear of us, I will tell you tidings gladly. But stop me when you're weary. Dwarves' tongues run on when speaking of their handiwork, they say." And with
they do.
They do.
Sorry.
Boy, don't they? No, don't apologize. You're absolutely right. And with that, Glóin embarked on a long account of the doings of the Dwarf Kingdom. Like I said, Frodo's like, why did they sit me next to this guy? He was delighted to have found so polite a listener, for Frodo showed no sign of weariness and made no attempt to change the subject, though actually he soon got rather lost among the strange names of people and places that he had never heard of before. He was interested, however, to hear that Dain was still king under the mountain, and was now old, having passed his 250th year, venerable and fabulously rich. Of the 10 companions who had survived the Battle of 5 Armies, 7 were still with him: Dwalin, Glóin, Dori, Nori, Bifur, Bofur, and Bombur. Bombur was now so fat that he could not move himself from his couch to his chair at table, and it took 6 young dwarves to lift him. "And what has become of Balin and Ori and Owen?" asked Frodo. A shadow passed over Glóin's face. "We do not know," he answered. "It is largely on account of Balin that I have come to ask the advice of those that dwell in Rivendell. But tonight let us speak of merrier things." Glóin began then to talk of the works of his people, telling Frodo about their great labors in Dale and under the mountain. "We have done well," he said, "but in metalwork we cannot rival our fathers, many of whose secrets are lost. We make good armor and keen swords, but we cannot again make mail or blade to match those that were made before the dragon came. Only in mining and building have we surpassed the old days." And I'll just stop there for now.
Yeah. Well, so going back to the beginning of that passage, since we've already commented on dwarves' tongues running on and on, let's go to Dain, right?
Yeah.
Dain is still king under the mountain.
Yes, he is.
He's past his 250th year, and
My goodness.
He's rich.
Yeah.
And venerable.
Well, yeah.
But rich. Let's not forget venerable, but he's fabulously rich. And 250 years old. Now, this is a respectable age, even for a dwarf. In the Peoples of Middle-earth, so that's History of Middle-earth, Volume 12. There's a section in that called The Making of Appendix A. And there's some additional information about Durin's folk that didn't make it into Appendix A that says that the average age of dwarves of Durin's line, if they weren't killed, of course, was about 250 years, which they seldom fell far short of. but could occasionally far exceed up to 300.
Wow.
Now get this. A dwarf of 300 was about as rare and aged as a man of 100.
Wow. Which back then would be really ancient. I mean,
yeah.
it's old now. 100 is but
yeah.
back then?
I mean, that's rare. Yeah.
That would be really rare.
So if he's past 250 years, he's up there. You got to figure he's the equivalent of a 75, 80-year-old man.
Yeah.
So
then we get a little bit on the on the 10 remaining companions, 7 of whom are still with him. So, of course, keeping in mind, Thorin, Fili, and Kili died. Spoiler.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the rest are still with Dane. And then they still are fat-shaming Bombur. I mean,
yeah, man.
Poor guy.
He could have just walked away from that one, Glóin. I mean,
I know.
You didn't have to.
You didn't have to go there.
You didn't have to go into, and guess how fat Bombur is now. Like, come on.
How many dwarves does it take to move Bombur? 6. That's no joke. Yeah.
Poor Bombur.
I mean, wouldn't it be easier to just have 2 people move the table to him? I don't know.
Probably.
Practically speaking.
But what about the other 3?
Right. What about the other 3?
And Ori and Owen?
I don't know. Moria. Moria. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's Moria, but, it's Moria.
But it's Moria. It's great.
Seriously.
That is great.
I thought, though, there was a little bit of that, we've talked about before about the sort of medieval tendency to look at the past as better. I love the touch of that we get here, that they still can't rival the past. This is another one of those recurring themes, isn't it? We see this a lot.
It is, and that's a really good catch, and we see, they're better at building and mining. These are, industrial and sort of practical pursuits.
Right,
but they're not better at craftsmanship.
Right.
They're not better at the artistic
art.
pursuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, to me, that really, in a way, reflects Tolkien's own sort of opinions on modern culture, doesn't it? I mean, sure, they're better at building train tracks and train stations and roads and cars, but
where's the art to it?
Where's the art?
Where's the art? Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
The whole speech that he gives here reminds me just a little tiny bit of Thorin's long speech from chapter 1 of The Hobbit.
Oh yeah.
And not because, when he's talking about how the dwarves have sunk and how they sunk as low as blacksmith work, I think he says.
Right.
And I don't mean it reminds me of that because it's the same. I mean, I guess there are some similarities, but
sure.
What it makes me think of is how the sort of the renewal that folks were expecting to come when the King Under the Mountain returned, that hasn't totally been fulfilled. I mean, there has been some renewal, but like you said, this is a declining world. You can't really rival the past. You can never regain the glory of the past.
No,
that's interesting.
You really can't. And we'll see more of that with Glóin's son, Gimli, in some conversations he has with Legolas in Minas Tirith.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So, and then even though we didn't read it, I got to tell you that the closing comment of this section with Glóin saying, "You were very fond of Bilbo, were you not?" And Frodo, "Yes, I would rather see him than all the towers and palaces in the world."
Yeah,
it's so sweet. It's just a reminder of how much Frodo loves Bilbo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So sweet. And such a nice little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not super subtle. We know what's coming, but
no.
It's sweet. It really is tender.
And I just have to imagine that everybody who's seen Bilbo and who knows he's there is just hearing Frodo say that and just kind of laughing to themselves. It's
can't
cute.
wait.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that reunion, I'm going to go ahead and have you pick up right about at that moment.
Okay. Slowly the hall filled, and Frodo looked with delight upon the many fair faces that were gathered together. The golden firelight played upon them and shimmered in their hair. Suddenly he noticed, not far from the further end of the fire, a small dark figure seated on a stool with his back propped against a pillar. Beside him on the ground was a drinking cup and some bread. Frodo wondered whether he was ill, if people were ever ill in Rivendell, and had been unable to come to the feast. His head seemed sunk in sleep on his breast, and a fold of his dark cloak was drawn over his face. Elrond went forward and stood beside the silent figure. "Awake, little master," he said, with a smile. Then turning to Frodo, he beckoned to him. "Now at last the hour has come that you have wished for, Frodo," he said. "Here is a friend that you have long missed." The dark figure raised its head and uncovered its face. Bilbo! Cried Frodo with sudden recognition, and he sprang forward. Hello, Frodo, my lad, said Bilbo. So you have got here at last. I hoped you would manage it. Well, well, so all this feasting is in your honor, I hear. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
What a moment that is, isn't it?
Such a great moment. Such a great moment. You see,
just heartwarming.
I mean, is this the happiest Frodo has been since he left the Shire? I think it may be.
That's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
In fact, I wrote yay in my book next to this.
This is a yay moment, isn't
I
it?
literally had nothing of substance to say. I just, next to this part, I just wrote yay! Exclamation point. So,
oh, goodness.
Great moment.
It really is.
Great moment. And we get, this is the Hall of Fire, isn't it?
Yeah, and we didn't really, kind of had you skip that line because there was so much to read here and we can't read all of it, but the description of the hall itself. No tables, bright fire burning in a great hearth, carven pillars. And Gandalf explains what's going to happen here. You're going to hear songs and stories, if you can stay awake. And it's usually empty and quiet. People come here to think and for peace and quiet. But there's always a fire. So anyway, just a neat place. I want to go there so bad.
Oh, so badly. And I love that tonight it's a place of gathering and song. It's a place for fellowship and community. But usually it's a place for contemplation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just love that. It feels poetic to me.
Absolutely.
But then we get after this, after that rather, we get the music of the minstrels as the hall fills up, the many fair faces shimmering hair.
Oh, it's almost magical just with their presence in the room, isn't it?
Yeah. The presence of elves makes the place magical. Absolutely.
And then, of course, we get the joyous reunion, and then some more talk. Like Bilbo's actually seen Frodo before. He's been with Sam watching over Frodo. How neat that is. Yeah.
Yeah. I have seen a good deal of you.
Yeah.
Comes in the passage after the passage I read.
Right.
I notice right after that, Bilbo's saying he doesn't go in for feasts much now.
Yeah.
I don't go in for such things much now. Now, he also had something else to do. And we know he's been writing.
And he's very upset at Elrond for interrupting him.
For interrupting that, for sure. Right. But I think that's really, really interesting.
Bilbo himself saying he doesn't go for feasting. That's a very good point.
That is a change in Bilbo Baggins. I mean, even...
it sure is.
Even as recently as Book 1, Chapter 1 of The Lord of the Rings, we saw him at a feast. Obviously, he was kind of there to play a prank on people, but still, we saw Bilbo in sort of his element, in a feast, in a celebration. Now, we really see him at this point where he just wants quiet. He just wants peace. He just wants to write and think and relax. And he does give Elrond a what for, doesn't he?
Oh, boy, doesn't he? And who has the guts to give Elrond a what for? But, boy, Bilbo certainly does.
That reminds me of what we're going to see in the next episode about
cheek.
His cheek in regards to the poem. Yep.
Yeah. I was not asleep, Master Elrond.
Speaking of which, he has to...
That's true. He's still working on that song.
He needs some help from his friend, this mysterious friend, the Dunedain.
My name is Dunedain. I like the name. So, of course, messengers go to look for him, and now Sam's joined them, and they talk together, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
So great. Some fellowship there.
Oh, there really is. So much fellowship. And, while we're not going to get all of that conversation, we're going to get a good piece here to kind of wrap up this section. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up here a little bit later, partway through the conversation. Gandalf has been here often. Not that he's told me a great deal. He has become closer than ever these last few years. The Dunedain has told me more. Fancy that ring of mine causing such a disturbance. It is a pity that Gandalf did not find out more sooner. I could have brought the thing here myself long ago without so much trouble. I've thought several times of going back to Hobbiton for it, but I am getting old, and they would not let me. Gandalf and Elrond, I mean. They seem to think that the enemy was looking high and low for me. It would make mincemeat of me if he caught me tottering about in the wild. And Gandalf said, "The ring has passed on, Bilbo. It would do no good to you or others if you tried to meddle with it again." Odd sort of remark, just like Gandalf, but he said he was looking after you, so I let things be. I'm frightfully glad to see you safe and sound. He paused and looked at Frodo doubtfully. "Have you got it here?" he asked in a whisper. "I can't help feeling curious, after all I've heard. I should very much like just to peep at it again." Yes, I've got it, answered Frodo, feeling a strange reluctance. It looks just the same as ever it did. Well, I should just like to see it for a moment, said Bilbo. When he had dressed, Frodo found that while he slept, the ring had been hung about his neck on a new chain, light but strong. Slowly he drew it out. Bilbo put out his hand. But Frodo quickly drew back the ring. To his distress and amazement, he found that he was no longer looking at Bilbo. A shadow seemed to have fallen between them, and through it he found himself eyeing a little wrinkled creature with a hungry face and bony, groping hands. He felt a desire to strike him. The music and singing round them seemed to falter, and a silence fell. Bilbo looked quickly at Frodo's face and passed his hand across his eyes. I understand now, he said. Put it away. I am sorry. Sorry you have come in for this burden. Sorry about everything. Don't adventures ever have an end? I suppose not. Someone else always has to carry on the story. Well, it can't be helped. I wonder if it's any good trying to finish my book. But don't let's worry about it now. Let's have some real news. Tell me all about the Shire. Oh,
wow.
Sweet Bilbo.
Mm-hmm. This is such a moment.
Isn't it? Such a moment. Going back to the beginning of this, but even before, to the stuff we skipped, right? Mm-hmm. We get to the fact that, he got to Rivendell. He even went all the way to Dale and came back to Rivendell. Mm-hmm. So he's done some travels.
Yeah.
Wrote more of his book.
He got here without much adventure. Not no adventure.
Right.
Not much adventure.
That's a good point.
Man, where are those stories? But we're not going to get them. Textual ruins.
We aren't.
But he's gotten back here. He's been doing some writing, writing his book, writing some songs.
Yep.
I like that, he realizes they're not Rivendell quality.
Yeah.
Well, they're
they
not
sing
really
them
just to please me. They're just humoring an old hobbit. These aren't really good songs. So humble.
I don't know. We listened to one of his songs coming up, and it's pretty good. But
yeah, it is. I look forward to reading all of that one.
Yeah.
No, I can't. I know. I won't.
I know. And I listen and I think. That makes me think of a poem we're going to see in just a couple of chapters, where I sit beside the fire and think. And he talks about all the things he sits beside the fire and thinks about. All that he's seen, of how the world's going to be, of people long ago, and how he's always listening for returning feet and voices at the door. I love that poem. And to have it sort of teased a little bit here is neat. Really like it.
Yeah. The other thing that's teased a little bit here is this idea that time doesn't seem to pass here.
Ooh, yeah, you're absolutely right.
And we, a little while ago, we talked about how Rivendell doesn't seem subject to the seasons the way the rest of Middle-earth is. Here we actually get Bilbo saying time doesn't seem to pass here. This is something I want to save for when we get to Lothlorien, because there's some really explicit stuff there.
Right? Very much so.
But you do get this idea that these fairy places are they're kind of on their own timeline.
Yeah. It's not just that they're in a different time zone. Time affects them differently altogether.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Getting into the part that I did read, I thought it was interesting that Gandalf didn't tell him anything. He's pity Gandalf didn't find out more sooner. And Gandalf hasn't told me much. The Dunedain has told me more. So Gandalf didn't know until recently. Would he have expressed suspicion to Bilbo early on? I mean, how would he have known about the ring? I heard about the ring, of course. Really? How? What did you hear?
That's a good question. Yeah, because I don't think Bilbo is saying he heard all of this just in the past 4 days, right?
No, I don't think so.
He's heard some of this stuff before. So, yeah, I guess. I mean, unless maybe Gandalf got to Rivendell before Frodo did, so maybe he's been there for a few weeks. But
but
I don't know.
I mean, look at the way this is said. I heard about the ring, of course. Gandalf has been here often. Not that he's told me a great deal. The Dunedain has told me more. To me, that sounds like
he's been here often. That suggests that he's been popping in and out, and he's been telling him stuff, or not telling him much,
or not telling him, or telling him just a little bit. But Strider's been telling him more. It's just interesting. And why would Aragorn tell him things if Gandalf hadn't? I don't know. I want to know more about that, and we just don't.
I know, right? That's a really good catch.
It's just.
And
really
like you said, Aragorn told him more.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And how much did they tell him? I mean, just this is a very powerful ring. We need to get rid of it, or did they tell him everything? That's the other thing we don't know. He seems to know about the ring.
Well, that's interesting because, obviously, one of our recurring themes, the ring at work.
Yeah.
We're seeing that a lot in this passage. I get the sense that, probably I wouldn't be surprised if Bilbo has thought about the ring since he left the Shire, and he might have asked about it.
Yeah.
And maybe when he asks, Aragorn tells him, you should really just forget about that ring.
Yeah.
Or Gandalf even tells him, the ring
Gandalf
is
literally
passed
tells
on.
him it's passed on. Yeah.
Tell him that. Yep, exactly.
It's passed on. It's joined the choir invisible.
This is an X ring.
It's an X ring.
So maybe that's it. Maybe they're telling him enough to say, look, you really just don't think about the ring anymore.
That's
right. It's hard.
Which is really helpful, don't think about pink elephants. What's the first thing in your head?
Right, totally. Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Pink elephants, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks a lot. Don't think about the ring. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, this is we know for a fact that he's thinking about it now because he's asking about it.
He's very
I would like to
peep
at it one more time, and he whispers it, which I love the way you read that, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Because, man, the way he whispers this just makes it all seem very sinister, doesn't it?
Yeah, conspiratorial, sort of this sort of.
He's saying something he knows he shouldn't be saying. He's saying something he doesn't want Elrond to hear or Gandalf to hear.
Oh yeah, he knows.
It's a bit like we've talked a little bit before about the sort of addictive nature of the ring.
Yeah, yeah.
And this to me is a little bit like it's like an alcoholic pouring vodka into a Coke can or something. Hiding it, hiding the addiction.
Yeah, you're right. Boy, and it still has such a hold of him even after all this time.
It does. Yeah.
Talk about the ring at work, huh?
And on both of them too, because it puts this shadow between them. Frodo right away. Frodo reacts. He's reluctant to bring it out, and so right away you see this push-pull between them. Frodo kind of recoiling from the fellowship of Bilbo because he's protective of the ring. Bilbo pushing against the fellowship of Frodo because he wants the ring. Really, really dark stuff.
And this vision, it's like a pre-Gollum vision, really. A little wrinkled creature with a hungry face and bony groping hands. Sounds a lot
Bilbo
like
being it's Bilbo being as Gollum-like as I think we'll ever see him.
Yeah.
And
except I'm not sure that. See, that's the thing. Bilbo isn't literally turning into that. It's that through the shadow, Bilbo sees Bilbo looking like this. It's as much an illusion as anything. I mean, it's at least I think. I think it's a total illusion.
Do you? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that there's a shade of reality here. That Bilbo is. I mean, he's certainly not. He's not a Gollum yet. He's nowhere near a Gollum yet. And I don't think it's anything. No, he's not. He's not turning into Gollum yet. But I think what Frodo is seeing is he's seeing the first inklings of that Gollum nature in Bilbo.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't think it's had the ring for so long. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. Obviously, I think everybody right now is probably thinking of Peter Jackson's movie and the the very overt Gollum. Yeah. And that worked well for the movie. It was really cinematic.
That was the great scary moment of the whole first film.
Yeah.
I think everybody in the theater was a little startled by that. Yeah.
It was a great moment, but I don't think it's that literal, but I do think that there is a sense in which this is real. And I don't know that it's purely illusion.
No, I guess I just meant Frodo is seeing Bilbo through this illusion, but it's not as though these things aren't true in some internal way. Bilbo is Frodo is seeing inside of Bilbo in a way.
Yes,
that there's a part of Bilbo when exposed to the ring becomes this wrinkled creature with a hungry face and bony groping hands. Not on the outside, nobody would ever see it visually, but Frodo can see that. Yeah,
he's seeing an aspect of Bilbo's nature. Unfortunately, there's a lot more to Bilbo right now.
Yes,
Frodo is seeing this aspect. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
Now, before we get to Bilbo's reaction and the fact that he recognizes his wrong here, his the error in even asking, I thought it was really interesting, and I don't know that I've caught this before, that the music and singing around them faltered and a silence fell. Wow.
It's like the scene in the Western when the piano player stops.
Yeah.
Something's going down in the saloon,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good catch.
That is just
honestly
intense is what you get right there.
Yeah. I mean, everybody in the room is aware that this is going on, or it
Mm-hmm.
seems to be. Even before that, actually, the fact that Frodo feels a desire to strike Bilbo.
Oh, I know.
Frodo is repulsed by this vision, whatever it is. Frodo is repulsed by it. Again, this is dark. This is a shadow between the two.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is. But Bilbo recognizes it and realizes, hey, this is on me. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sorry you even had to deal with this. You should never have had to be a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way he walks through this. Like, I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry that it's happened. I'm sorry for everything. And then, don't adventures ever have an end? Well, I guess not. Somebody has to keep going.
Yeah.
It's sort of this. It's like he's thinking out loud, but it's a neat thread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And you can see, he introduces that with "I understand now," and you can see understanding dawning on him.
You really can. Absolutely, you can.
Yeah.
I think he realizes, because he would have seen Gollum, when he was at his most heartbroken as he was getting out of the caves, and Gollum's, thief Baggins, who hates it forever. And he realizes that to Frodo, he looks like Gollum did to him.
He looks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But he recovers so quickly. And I love that about Bilbo. It's, again, more of that Hobbit resilience. And he wraps it up with saying, tell me about the Shire. What a neat moment that is. Just, I wish I could be a part of that conversation. Wouldn't that be neat?
I dare say that is a lifeline for Bilbo at this point, don't you think?
I think it is. Absolutely is. Yeah.
He's feeling adrift. He's realizing that he's got this bit of Gollum nature in himself, and he's like,
yeah,
I've got to cling to something that's gonna keep me grounded. That's gonna keep me a hobbit.
This is the antidote. The Shire is the antidote to that stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So tell me about the Shire. I want to hear about that. Awesome.
Yep. Man, I love this stuff. Well, folks, that may wrap up our discussion on the second part of mini meetings, but we're not quite done yet. We've got Bartleman's Bag coming your way in just a minute here. And even when that's done, well, the talk continues all night long at the Prancing Pony.
That's right. We've always got lots of discussion happening in our social media spaces. At our common room on Facebook, you'll find comments, questions, corrections, and more on every episode, as well as updates from us throughout the week. Just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast on Facebook and click the like and follow buttons. And we're also on Reddit now. We've got a small and new, but very quickly growing community there. So come check out our new subreddit at r/prancingponypod for the newest common room on the internet.
Absolutely. Now you can also find us on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod and on Instagram at Prancing Pony Pod. So follow us wherever you might be. And if you like us, share us on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or anywhere else you can find Tolkien fans.
And if you really want to let the world know your feelings about us, give us a review on iTunes. The more reviews we have, the more visible our podcast is. That helps others find us and this great community of Tolkien fans we've built together.
And finally, if you'd like access to exclusive content like postscripts, quarterly specials, PPP swag, and more, check out patreon.com/prancingponypod to find out how you can join the fellowship of the podcast. Now, I think it's time to see what old Bartleman has in the mailbag for us. Sean.
Okay. Well, our first one tonight comes from Sam H. in Chicago. Sam says, as Frodo wakes in Rivendell and your new season starts, I was wondering, how do you envision the size and population of Rivendell? Is it a single house, or is it more like a manorial estate or even a village or town? How many rooms does Elrond's house have? And how do they accommodate Bilbo's party or the soon-to-be fellowship? And how many elves and others are there to be found there in non-council times? Tens? Hundreds? I'm interested to hear if there's any source material on this, and if not, just to hear your thoughts. Thanks for all your work on the show and the community. Well, you're very welcome, Sam. Alan, do you want to start this one?
Well, sure. Unfortunately, there's not really any source material that answers this question directly. I guess you could say it's up there with the tax policies of King Elisar in terms of details about the world that Tolkien has no intention of giving us. Sorry to disappoint you, George R.R. Martin.
Nice.
But we could do some speculation based on some of Tolkien's illustrations of Rivendell, so we'll start there. If you look online, you'll find a lot of material that claims that the Swiss village of Lauterbrunnen was an inspiration for Rivendell. Now, Tolkien visited Lauterbrunnen in 1911, and if you look at Tolkien's illustrations of the valley, particularly the one called Rivendell, that's figure 108 in J.R.R. Tolkien, Artist and Illustrator by Hammond and Scull, you can absolutely see a resemblance between it and photos of Lauterbrunnen. So it definitely was an inspiration. For what it's worth, Lauterbrunnen today is a village of just over 2,000 people. But I honestly don't know if that's worth all that much, because there's nothing that suggests that Elrond's settlement, or whatever it is at Rivendell, is based on that actual village. And I'd have to guess Rivendell is much smaller, since we know it's a bit harder to find Rivendell than, say, an entire village in the Alps. So if you wanted to pick a number that the population of Rivendell must be smaller than, you could probably say it's smaller than 2,000. But I have to say I think it's much smaller than that, though, because there's nothing in the text that suggests Rivendell is an entire village. It's always called the House of Elrond, or as we discussed earlier, the Last Homely House. We'll get several references in the coming chapters to Elrond's household. So I think what we're dealing with is more like a large country house or a manor estate than an entire village. Now, if you look at another book by Hammond and Scull, The Art of the Hobbit, check out Figure 17, Riding into Rivendell. It depicts Rivendell as only two buildings, one large multi-story hall with a smaller building, maybe a stable, to the right, surrounded by some farms, orchards, and mountains, but no other buildings. Another version of Elrond's house, in Figure 18 of the same book, depicts it as a two-story building with a timbered roof, essentially a rectangular building with what appears to be a courtyard in the middle.
Now, I am not an architecture expert by any means. I'm farthest from it that you can imagine. So take this with a grain of salt. But when I look at the pictures you just described, Figure 17 and Figure 18, in The Art of the Hobbit, to me it looks a lot like an example of what's called a hall house, or an open hall house, which is a style of architecture common in Britain in the late Middle Ages. These were large houses or mansions, basically a place where a lord resided with his family and his retainers. It was built around a large hall. In fact, these houses were actually the evolution of the old Anglo-Saxon mead hall, like Harrow and Beowulf.
Right.
And so, in that hall, you'd have a hearth, which we know Elrond's house has, right? We just talked about the Hall of Fire.
Yeah.
That area would be used for community gatherings. And to me, this all fits with the function of Elrond's house. And I think it all fits with the kind of stuff that we know Tolkien was interested in and inspired by. So I tend to think of it in terms of that hall house. So this all fits with the function of Elrond's house, and it fits with the kind of stuff that we know Tolkien was interested in and inspired by. Now, I guess I probably would suspect Rivendell might be bigger than the average hall house, just because, I don't know, it feels like it should be bigger. It's elvish. It should be a little bit more epic and grander, just because it's part of this world. So I'm imagining a little bit bigger than that, but still something along those lines.
Not a village, right?
Right.
We're definitely more in manor house territory. But, look up some examples of medieval manor houses to get an idea. This is not Downton Abbey.
No, it's not. Although, just for giggles, I actually did look up the real-life building that Downton Abbey is based on. It's called Highclere Castle.
Yeah.
Just because I was curious, what is a manor house like in Tolkien's time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And apparently, now I've never watched Downton Abbey. I understand that the staff in that show was a bit smaller than this, but apparently the real-life Highclere Castle has actually housed as many as 150 people, just counting the staff.
Wow, that is,
So, again, bigger than Rivendell, but, kind of, I guess not much bigger than Rivendell, I guess.
So we're probably in the 100, maybe 200 range in terms of total population of Rivendell?
I guess if we had to guess, yeah. I mean, plenty enough to fill the trees with tra-la-la lallies. How about that?
Well, yeah, there's that.
So, there you go, Sam. Alan, we've got one more, don't we?
We do. Derek Y. in Columbus, Ohio wrote in to say, I was pondering the similarities of Aragorn Arwen and Baron Luthien, and the notion of an impossible task came to mind. Thingol sent Baron to do a task that seemed impossible to overcome so that he could take the hand of his daughter. I feel like Elrond does a similar thing to Aragorn. Paraphrasing, go overthrow the Dark Lord and become king of men, then I'll give you my daughter's hand. How much foresight did Elrond have as to whether or not this would be accomplished? We know Thingol was loath to give Luthien away. Were there the same thoughts for Elrond? Kind of, if I thought he could do it, I'd have killed him myself type of thing? Sean?
Well, good question. Certainly can see some parallels there, but why don't we take a look at both texts and see how the text presents this to us? How do we see the father setting the impossible task, quote unquote, to the future son-in-law?
Right.
Going back to the Silmarillion, we saw, first of all, Luthien refused to bring Beren before Thingol until he, and I'm quoting here, swore an oath to her that he would neither slay Beren nor imprison him. Now, he regrets this oath as soon as Beren opens his mouth. And we know that because he says, "Death you have earned with these words, and death you should find suddenly, had I not sworn an oath in haste, of which I repent, base-born mortal."
Not exactly the best meet the parents moment in history.
No, let me tell you about mine someday.
Oh, please do.
No, I'm kidding. It's wonderful. I adore my father-in-law. No, I'm kidding.
Good.
No, but finally, Thingol assigns the task to Beren, and the text says, "And those that heard these words perceived that Thingol would save his oath, and yet send Beren to his death." And then it goes on to say how impossible it is to get a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown.
Right.
In other words, there's no question in the text that Thingol is absolutely 100% sending Beren after the Silmaril to kill him.
True.
But now let's take a look at Lord of the Rings and Appendix A5
Okay.
and the task that Elrond assigns to Aragorn. And Alan, it's kind of a long one here. Why don't you read that one for us?
Sure, you got it. When Elrond learned the choice of his daughter, he was silent, though his heart was grieved, and found the doom long feared none the easier to endure. But when Aragorn came again to Rivendell, he called him to him, and he said, "My son, years come when hope will fade, and beyond them little is clear to me, and now a shadow lies between us. Maybe it has been appointed so, that by my loss the kingship of men may be restored. Therefore, though I love you, I say to you, Arwen and Domio shall not diminish her life's grace for less cause. She shall not be the bride of any man less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor. To me, then, even our victory can bring only sorrow and parting. But to you, hope of joy for a while. Alas, my son, I fear that to Arwen, the doom of men may seem hard at the ending." Now, I'd say that's a little different from "Death you have earned, base-born mortal," which I love. What a line.
Quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, there's none of the indignation. There's none of the "how dare you" that you get with Thingol. Elrond here, I don't see him as angry. He's sad. He knows that, first of all, he knows that his daughter has made her choice.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I mean, it makes sense that Arwen's choice would not be alien and unthinkable to him the way that it was to Thingol because, well, we know Elrond's heritage.
Right.
So
Elrond knows full well, yeah.
He's grown up knowing that this is a thing. So he's not going to have that sense of indignation that Thingol does.
No.
But beyond that, far from seeming to wish any kind of harm to Aragorn, he calls him my son.
Yeah.
He says he loves him.
Right.
He also acknowledges that Arwen's choice, as painful as it is to him and as much as he is afraid of it, that it may be for a good cause. It may be for the restoration of the kingship of men.
Right.
I think there's a lot going on here. I think that he recognizes that he doesn't have complete control of the situation.
Right.
He recognizes that he may lose his little girl. But at the same time, he makes it clear that he will not allow her. And I wonder what she'd say about that.
Dad, I'm 2,700 years old. You can't tell me what to do anymore. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
Seriously, I think, yeah, if Arwen has got any of her great-great-grandma in her, she'd be like, I'm doing this and you can't stop me.
That's right. You're telling me what, Dad?
Right. But no, I mean, he does say, he sees all this. He does see this as a possibility. He doesn't like it, but he accepts it. But he makes sure that he's not going to give her up unless it's for a good cause.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, long story short, Elrond does not wish death upon Aragorn. Too late, I know. He doesn't wish death upon Aragorn the way Thingol does to Beren. He recognizes that this may be fated to happen. Maybe it has been appointed so, he says.
Yeah.
So I don't think he thinks it's impossible.
No.
Maybe it's unlikely, but it's not impossible the way Thingol saw Beren's quest for the Silmaril to be. I think Elrond is just like many dads. He wants his future son-in-law to prove he's worthy. I think that's really different from Thingol.
Though admittedly, Thingol does come around in the end after he realizes how wrong he is. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
In fact, he lends a helping hand to Beren, one might say.
Oh,
but hey, that awful dad joke wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Please be sure to join us again next week, though, when I take a day off and let Sean do an entire episode on Arendelle.
Oh, now, Alan, I might let you say something if you're nice.
Maybe. Well, if that's the case, though, I'm doomed. So As always, folks, we want to thank each of you for listening, and we also want to offer a very special thank you to our patrons at the Kierdan's contribution tier. DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Emily in Texas, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, and Bruce in California. Thank you all so very much.
Make sure you don't miss a single episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, and most of all, your tales from the Hall of Fire to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com.
Barliman's not always punctual with the mail, but we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And your question or comment may be featured on an upcoming show.
Well, folks, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.